Hey everybody, welcome back to this episode of Think Business Live. I'm looking forward to talking with Monica Parikh. Monica, it's good to have you on the show again. I appreciate you coming back on. Let me give a quick intro on you, Monica. You're a teacher, a writer, a lawyer, a public speaker. Through your business, School of Love NYC, you teach global audiences about love, about psychology, and about higher consciousness. I really want to dive into higher consciousness. I'm a big believer that the level of consciousness that got us to where we are cannot get us to where we need to be. And I think as we sit here on May 14th, 2021, recording this, I think the world, because of whether you think, I think we're kind of in an endemic, right? Yesterday, they came out with, you don't have to wear a mask in many places, and for vaccinated people, and outside, they're really changing the rules very aggressively. So I think many people would say we're kind of at this endemic, and there was a level of consciousness, I think, that for sure rose up in March, April, and May of 2020 as we were all in lockdown globally. And I'm hoping that it doesn't go away when 3, 4, however many months from now, where this all goes away. And all of a sudden we kind of like lose that level of consciousness, right? Lose that level of gratitude that I think a lot of us have really plugged more deeply into. And so my first question to you is, teaching consciousness. How do you teach consciousness when things are good and you don't have as much time to reflect?
Oh, what a great question.
Yeah.
I think the benefit of when things are good is that you feel good and you feel happy and you feel positive. And when I think about consciousness, I always am just thinking about thoughts and feelings, and that we want to move our thoughts and feelings to greater and greater positivity. And to me, what I've seen happen during the pandemic is a lot of fear has been really hammered into the collective psyche through the media, through the medical system, that it's a constant fear. And so I think that one of the challenges, or perhaps one of the opportunities, is for people who really understand the link between mental and emotional health and physical health, really push people to move towards more optimistic, faith-based thinking, including just understanding that if they can holistically treat themselves very well, that they're more likely to fight off the effects of, illness on the body. But I do think that, pain is often a catalyst for change. And so we've had a collective pain point, all of us around the world together. And I've noticed a lot of people in my community really changing for the better in so many profound ways. And my hope is that those people will be the light that carry other people upwards as well.
Yeah. So, diving into that, lifting people up and things of that nature, and, people being a catalyst, I think that requires a lot of mindfulness. I see that as a business coach when I'm in companies, the leaders, everybody, but specifically the leaders, need to have a level of mindfulness, an extended level of consciousness when leading. They're under a microscope. But if we just kind of like zoom into mindfulness, which I think is absolutely a critical element of personal and business success. How do we stay mindful when we are constantly when many people feel, I think, like they're in a constant adjustment period. There's no space to kind of like, over this past year specifically, to get in a car and go somewhere and go to your typical Starbucks run, where you typically had those moments of, structured mindfulness, right? Where do you fit it in today's hybrid normalcy world?
I think it's really important to have it be ritualized. For many years, I was practicing law and building my business on the side, which meant that I was ostensibly working, anywhere between 40 to 70 hours a week. And one of the rituals I'm really grateful for in my own life that I started at a really early age was that I'm an early riser. So I love getting up before everyone else is up in the world. And I always do an hour of exercise and about 30 to 45 minutes of meditation before I start texting, before I turn on my computer, before I answer the phone. And that's the time I connect with myself. And I found that the consistent practice of that has opened up so many portals of different thinking in my mind, or different understanding of problems. And I think that one of the greatest opportunities of the pandemic was so many people were being called to really start to connect with themselves. And the people who did that, I think, experienced a lot of profound change in their thinking. And the people who are looking for external validation or distraction miss that opportunity. So I think that, the more that you can ritualize that ability to connect with yourself and also a higher power, the greater leadership that you really can command. Because, one of the things I teach a lot in the curriculum that I've built for my business is being responsive, not reactive. Mm-hmm. And I think if you even pulled back the lens on the pandemic a little bit, you can see collectively how reactive the collective really is, as opposed to being responsive. And reactivity, to me, breeds more reactivity. It causes like a cascading effect, right? So I think it's really important to learn the difference between those two.
Yeah. And so as you learn the difference for those two, I just want to kind of back up for a minute, because you're talking about meditation and opening up portals. I'm a huge meditator. I do transcendental meditation. So I've been trained in that, trained in Silva Mind Method. my most recent favorite app is Waking Up by Sam Harris. He's got great morning meditations. I agree with you. I believe they open up portals. They give you the ability to get in alignment, get grounded. Meditation can be very difficult, though. There's nothing. Some moments it's easy, some moments it's difficult, some moments it's comfortable, some moments it's uncomfortable. Talk a little bit about, because I think when some people hear you say you meditate for 30 minutes, I think a lot of people who have never meditated are thinking they don't even know if they could do it for 1 minute. And so what are some ways to start meditating?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. And, if you read the statistical analysis or data regarding meditation, it's something like 80% of the positive effects of meditation are just sitting on the mat. So it doesn't have to be done well. And there is no well, So when I first began meditating, and that might have been about, now it's got to be, I don't know, somewhere between 8 to 10 years ago, I was super fighting up against myself. I knew it was something I kind of wanted to try. And I was asking friends who did it, does it work? And how long do you do it for? And in the early initial stages, I just wanted to try it for 5 minutes. 5 minutes was basically the amount I could bear. And a really good piece of advice that I got, that I often give the people I coach now, is it's not really about clearing your mind of thought. Of course, that's the ultimate goal. But in the beginning, I think it's more about just allowing your thoughts to pass by and becoming a detached observer of them. So I found that the less I fought up against myself for the practice, and just said, okay, I'm going to try this for 5 minutes, and I will make a commitment to do that for the next 21 days. And in those 5 minutes, my mind is never going to turn off. That is opposed to attaching to those thoughts. If I can just observe what my mind is thinking and allow my mind to empty itself out, what's going to happen at the end of that? And, of course, as with most practices in life, the more you do it, the more profound it becomes for you. And so now I find that time when I don't have it, I just noticed such a massive change in how I feel and how I show up in the world, that it's something I wouldn't go without. I consider it as integral as like water and flossing my teeth, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I love it. I want to talk about the power of meditation and how it gets people centered. And I think the more centered you are, the more it opens up your ability to actually, because I think one thing COVID taught a lot of us in this pandemic is that we need to take care of ourselves, right? There hasn't been a study, but I would say the study probably would say that the average person over COVID over this past year gained probably 5 to 15 pounds, right? So taking care of ourselves has not been as easy because we've been, kind of in one place, right? It's easier to kind of graze and nosh and, and snack and things of that nature. And so how do you get centered so you don't get lost in everything that you do throughout the day? Because one of the things you do is you study psychology, you map it together with meditation and quantum physics and spirituality. And so, for many people, I think this past year and a half has been, moments of calm, moments of panic, moments of fear, moments of stress, right? And so it's hard to kind of find, the straight line for a long period of time, I think. And so how do you work with your clients to kind of find neutral?
Yeah, one of the things that I talk a lot about in my business is compounded grief. And, so, a lot of people will come to me through my business when they've experienced a very devastating breakup, something like a divorce, someone walking out and abandoning them, a broken engagement, something that's like a cataclysmic life event. And what I find is that usually in life, when it rains, it pours. So it's usually not just one trauma, but it may be a series of traumas. And I certainly have been through that experience in my own life. And when I was going through it in my own life, where, I just had a lot of compounded grief, what I found was that the calmer I could bring myself, the more that I could calm my parasympathetic nervous system, the better thinking I could have. And sometimes when you have really complicated problems, you have to think at a higher level, like exactly how you started the podcast. And I was so happy to hear you say that because, that's an Einstein quote where you can't solve a problem at the level of consciousness that created it. You actually have to shift to an upward level. And so a lot of what I learned was basically that, when I'm thinking at that level of panic, that's my worst mind.
Yeah.
And so when I want to really solve a complicated problem, and a lot of, I think, the problem or the opportunity of the pandemic was the breaking of codependency. So to me, codependency is when you put other people's needs ahead of yours. And as women in society, we were really socialized to behave in this manner, right? To put ourselves last. And what I found in my own life and, what I teach my clients now is that when we put ourselves last, we have only a certain amount of energy every day. And when we're operating from that place of depletion, resentment and anger and rage are usually on the other side of that. But when you're really taking good care of yourself and putting yourself first, you have a ton of energy, and then you can give that energy to other people from, a place of abundance and like, I want to be of service and how can I help? But a big part of that as well, with self-care is, I think, learning boundaries. And boundaries are a huge part of the curriculum I teach. Just teaching people that it's okay to say no, that it's okay to let go of fear, obligation, and guilt and say, I would love to help you, but I'm not able to. And especially in family dynamics, that can be exceptionally complicated if, you've really been trained to be the uber giver and everyone has kind of like depended on you to play a role that doesn't serve you anymore.
Yeah, I want to talk about, though, you're talking about curriculum that you teach, and I want to get to that in a minute, but I want to talk about for a moment the curriculum that you've been through, right? You're a graduate of Northwestern University. You're a graduate of Cornell Law School. And in your bio, I found it interesting. You talk about, you believe that the conventional education is woefully inadequate in preparing us to develop healthy relationships. That being said, you and many others, I'm about to send my son to Indiana in the fall, are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to be taught by professors, teachers, right? Adjuncts, professors, et cetera. Something that is how do we get more real life, right? Skills coming out of college. I hear it over and over and over again. Even people graduating in very specific skilled areas, XYZ comes out of school, they don't know what they need to know. right? And so is it the teacher's responsibility? Is it the university's responsibility? Or is it the individual's responsibility to read and educate and get internships and jobs on top of all of the other things they're doing, on top of having a social life?
Wow, that's a great question. And I'm going to give you my unvarnished, truthful answer. So, yeah, I felt at the end of hundreds of thousands of dollars of education, when I went through a very traumatic divorce, and I really started to not only learn about psychology and higher consciousness, but a big part of the learning for me was nonviolent communication. So how do we really de-escalate conflict? How do we align needs? How do we voice our boundaries? All the things that we're talking about on our show today. And I really thought this is not only integral to life success. A lot of what I teach also is finding your life purpose and stepping into your purpose. And, none of this is taught. None of this is taught in a university setting. And actually, I went to many universities and said, let me teach this to young kids, because it will dramatically transform their lives and change the trajectory of their lives. I don't know, John, if you're familiar with the Harvard Grant study, but the Harvard Grant study was the longest longitudinal study of men and what leads to life success. And the number one factor of a lifetime of success is the relationships you have in your life, including the romantic partner you choose. And the thing is, I thought, well, isn't that something that the most important thing we spend no time studying and no time learning, like how to do it correctly? And I think that one of the things that makes me really excited is millennials especially are super excited about the message that I'm preaching. And I think it's because they've seen a lot of their parents fail in marriage, and they've been sort of like the collateral damage of dysfunctional family systems. And they want to love in a healthy way, and they want to understand how to pick a great partner, and they want to understand what components you need to think about. So, in answer to your question, I think that if you're going to charge kids, upwards of $25,000 a year and indebt them for decades potentially, then you should be teaching them the core principles of emotional intelligence, and that should be put on equal footing as IQ. And I also think that, and it's something I talk a lot about with some of my clients who may have children who are not prospering in conventional education systems, that I really feel that college isn't for everyone. And that was kind of the mantra that was hammered, down all of our throats. But finding a life purpose and what you love to do and are especially good at, and developing that to me seems to be a much more magic formula for success than, forcing people to sit in desks for 8 hours a day and learn things that they're never going to use in life at all.
Yeah. I'm going to be 49 on Saturday. And
I just turned 49.
Oh, happy birthday. Your birthday. When's your birthday?
April 27th.
Happy birthday.
Are you a Taurus, John?
Yeah, I'm a Taurus.
And no wonder we love each other.
Yeah. My wife is a Taurus too. She was born May 5th. She just had her birthday. Yeah.
Oh, do you know about the Taurus ascension that's happening right now? Not to put you on an astrological trajectory, but no, it's an incredibly special time for our sign that hasn't happened since the Great Depression. Yes.
Really? All right. Well, we'll stay on after. We'll talk more about that. But I want to talk to you about. I lost my train of thought. Oh, so I'm going to be 49. But when I was 37, and I'm not saying this to impress you, but I was a Cranes 40 under 40, and I got a present from Walsh College, which is a college, kind of a college here. And so they sent me a Starbucks card with a mug congratulating me. So I called them and I said, hey, I'd love to teach a class about life, getting people ready for life skills. And they said, well, you don't have a master's, so you can't teach here. And so I said, I know, but I've sold a company, I've grown a company, I've this, I have like life experience. I really would, but they wouldn't let me. And so you have these organizations that won't let people like me go in and teach. because I don't have a master's, but I've sold a company, I've built companies, I've restructured companies, so to me, I think the structure has to change a bit. I'm all for higher education and respect the rules, but I think there's got to be some type of hybrid for the kids, because we're moving into a decade where it's all about adaptability.
100%.
And pre-COVID studies are showing that by the year 2030, 85% of the jobs that exist do not exist today. So colleges,
100%.
Right. So colleges are having a hard time even teaching to the job market that doesn't even exist right now as we sit here in 2021. So
I won't. Well, I will. I'll tell a tale out of school that I have several clients who are Ivy League professors. And the truth is, they're not my best clients. As shocking as that may be, and it's usually because their IQ is so large that they cannot believe that they have not developed themselves emotionally. So they don't stay and do the work for a long enough period of time, because there's quite a bit of humbling that needs to happen when you go before a coach or a psychotherapist and you say, can you just tell me what's wrong with me? You know? And so think about that, the entire model and structure. And, to your point, John, when I was in law school, the thing that was the most baffling to me is they don't let practitioners often teach. The people who are professors usually have no practical skills. They've never been in a courtroom. They've never filed a claim. They've never had to go through any of this. And in fact, a couple of years ago, I had to go through a lawsuit, and I hired an old boss of mine to represent me. And, when I was now not his employee, but his client, I was a little bit actually shocked. Not a little bit, quite a bit shocked by the lack of empathy and the lack of self-awareness of being, a woman with an all-male legal team. And I was like, I would really love to go into this law firm and teach empathy as a required skill set.
They need it.
I'm sure you can imagine that kind of went over like a lead balloon. So the thing is I think there's a lot of us having a higher level conversation, but those people who are existing at a certain plane, they can't hear it, which is half the problem,
I have a private coaching group with a buddy of mine, Randy Denhoff, who's a state attorney. And we collaborated and have a private coaching group for attorneys only. So I'll have you come speak to that group. And
I would love to be there.
About empathy. When you're talking, it reminds me of a movie decades ago I watched. It was called The Doctor with William Hurt. And he was such a horrible human being as a doctor, and then he became a patient, and then he realized what was broken in the system. Anyway, getting back to you, you have, from what I read about you, your clients report faster change than in conventional psychotherapy, and so, walk people through the process of actually what you do and how you do it.
Gosh, that's such a good question. What I do is I try to teach people principles of energy, psychology, and consciousness. And a lot of it is just becoming a detached observer of your own behavior, and also approaching life problems from a different level of thinking. So the way that I kind of see it is that we've all been socialized and programmed. We're programmed first in our families, and then we're programmed in our educational systems, and we're programmed in our employment context. And a lot of times what we do when we have a big life problem is we run to somebody in our family or somebody at school or someone at our job, and we say, can you help me fix this problem? And usually those people are kind of all at the same level of thinking. And a lot of the things that we are taught to think or taught to understand are wrong. So even in the context of today's conversation, a lot of times when women come to me and their marriages break apart, they're very devastated by the end or the sudden loss of a marriage, as I certainly was. The same thing happened to me. And what happens is they approach that problem with a level of thinking. And that level of thinking might be, he's evil. I can't believe how he wronged me. How could he do this to me? And a lot of my life's work is shifting that thinking and beginning to see every problem as an opportunity for growth and change. Because you want to look back at any cataclysmic life event and say, God, I'm so glad that happened to me. If that hadn't happened to me, then this wouldn't happen, and that wouldn't happen, and that wouldn't happen, and there wouldn't have been so much growth. Yeah. And the thing is, a lot of times what happens is we get stuck in a narrative, and that narrative is, I'm a victim. And so what I want for my clients is none of them are victims, that's often the beginning of a new chapter. And that new chapter is going to be richer and better and more robust, whether that's you repair the relationship and the relationship then exists at a higher level of compassion and understanding and intimacy, or whether it's, I went as far in this relationship as I could with this person. And the next time around, these are the qualities I'm looking for. And that this is how I have to develop as a person to attract that to myself. Yeah. Sometimes it's, with a lot of my clients who are incredibly intelligent people, I'm like, what's your life purpose? Why are you here? And a lot of what I try to do is help them step into their life purpose so they can attract somebody who's even existing in a complementary purpose to them. And those people together can, really create a legacy together. So it's really, I think, about up-leveling. And up-leveling to me requires a certain level, at least in my own life. When I had a period from 2015 to 2019 that was just brutal. It was beyond anything I could have imagined emotionally and mentally. And I was so grateful to have a really good coach beside me the entire time, who was shifting my thinking about everything, was saying, no, you have to put yourself first. You have to get selfish. You have to cut these people off. You have to tell them no, because I had been trained to be such a good girl and do everything for everyone else, that a lot of the shifts were they were incomprehensible to me, really. I needed that emotional and mental support.
Yeah. I love it. Well, I think a lot of times the best teachers teach their pain, and you have taken quite a path from your pain to helping so many other people. You ready for a quick speed round, Monica?
I would love it. Yes.
All right. One thing people would be surprised to know about you.
I love potato chips. I could eat them all day long.
Yeah. I never really loved potato chips until I had kids. And then then I just have a new love of potato chips.
I can't even keep them around me.
Yeah. I say that my kids are 15 and 18, so I have to stop using them as the reason why. But, favorite book and why?
My favorite book? Favorite book is Power versus Force. And I also love The Road Less Traveled, because they're about psychology and higher consciousness, and I love them.
Yeah. One thing everybody can do today, that first small step to increase their level of consciousness.
Remember that everything is happening for you, not to you. So find the opportunity in whatever is going down.
Yeah. I think also if you can kind of surrender and allow things to actually flow through you is actually another level of consciousness.
I'm reading The Power of Surrender right now by Dr. Hawkins. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Define yourself in one word.
Tenacious.
Okay. One piece of technology, your favorite app.
Oh, my favorite app. I hate to say this because I hate to be a product plugger, but I love YouTube. I listen to music all day long.
Okay. And fast forward 100 years, what do you want your legacy to be?
That I really raised the collective consciousness of young women.
That's great. Monica, it's a pleasure having you on the show. I always appreciate your message, your wisdom, talking about everything that you're talking about today when it comes to the curriculum, how to deal with grief, how to ritualize what you do, how to really raise your level of consciousness, right? We all have a responsibility, whether it's through a walk in nature, a meditation or something, to infuse in our day those minutes or those moments where we take the responsibility to raise our own level of consciousness. Like you said, we all have to be a catalyst for light in the world, and it happens 1 millisecond at a time. And so I know everybody lives very busy lives, but it's just taking that moment. Any final thoughts, Monica, before we close up?
I would just say that, things have been unbelievably hard for almost everybody, and the challenges have been different. And so a lot of times you don't know what's going on in people's lives, and they may put on a really nice face. And so be kind, try to be a positive, kind person to everyone you meet, and really understand that you might not know what's happening behind closed doors for someone.
I love it. That's great advice. You can never put too much kind in the world. So thanks for that. Tell people how to contact you, Monica.
They can find me through my website, schooloflovenyc.com. And that's the fastest and easiest way to find me.
All right. Think community, if Monica can help you, please reach out. Don't hesitate. And if you need any coaching or any thoughts on anything for Monica, give her a buzz. Business coaching, give me a buzz. And you can also go to my website, download my book or my ebook for free at johndwoskin.com. Monica, it was a pleasure connecting with you. I appreciate your time. Stay on. I want to hear about my Taurus in the stars. Thanks, everybody. Have an awesome day.